This microcosm gate, and that's the gate that you see in the center, which allows the pollinating fig wasp to enter. This is one-way entry only. So you have to follow the rules, because once you get in, you can't come back. Okay, and the reason you can't come back for these wasps is that there are particular botanical floral structures which will prevent the return of the wasp. Moreover, as I've written on the slide, these wasps, they lose their antennae in the process of getting through this very, very tight gate. They lose their wings also. So if you've lost your wings, if you've lost your antennae, this clearly means that you cannot get into another microcosm. You can't reach it. You can't find your way, because that's it. Now, if you realize this, you then also realize that wasps have to be very, very sure that this is the right microcosm that they are going to enter. If they enter the wrong one, make a mistake, they can't undo the mistake. And this is actually a reason why I like to choose and work with very specific systems like this, because you have a greater opportunity to find out the rules which govern the functioning of these very, very, very specific microcosms. So this is the legitimate entry that I showed you, that the pollinating fig wasp wants to do. But you know, every entry point will have some illegitimate ways to enter, any structure that we want to protect. And there are a lot of these illegitimate visitors that you can see on the side of the fig. And these illegitimate visitors can only enter the microcosm through that very long needle-shaped egg-laying organ called the ovipositor. And that's the only way that that illegitimate visitor can enter the microcosm and deposit her eggs. So she can populate the microcosm with eggs that are being laid from the outside, because she is unable to enter. Yes? And as I have shown you here, those of you who might know a little bit of botany, there is a process of galling, and galling is nothing but a benign tumor that a plant forms in relation to any stimulus. So if there is an excess of cytokines or an excess of any one of the growth hormones, the plant growth hormone, a slight galling tumor will form. So illegitimate visitors can gall the internal structures and then lay their eggs, so that their larvae now are feeding on this kind of tumorous tissue which has been formed inside. So, right. As I've said, this microcosm develops, and there is a whole developmental progression. It goes from being very, very small on the left side of the screen to slowly growing in size, until ultimately those organisms, those wasps that have developed inside, they will leave the microcosm, and they will leave the microcosm with the help of an exit point that is now being cut by the male wasps that have no wings. So they will cut out an exit hole, and wasps will then subsequently be released from this microcosm. So there is a whole turnaround or turnover between wasps that come in, they lay their eggs legitimately or illegitimately, and then finally everybody leaves at the same time. Once this happens, the last stage on the right side, when all the wasps have left, that's when the fig will become ripe and the seeds will be ready for dispersal by a fruit-eating organism. So this is the general kind of development cycle that we have. And as I told you, in the model organism that we have been studying, which is Ficus racemosa, we have 7 species of wasps that inhabit these tiny microcosms. One wasp is legitimate and the remaining 6 are illegitimate, in the sense that they really are exploiting this relationship between the plant and its pollinator. 3 of the other wasps are these galling wasps, and the other 3 are carnivorous wasps that feed on the larvae of the other galling wasps. So this is what the wasps look like. All the wasps on the top are females. They have wings and they have a very long egg-laying organ called the ovipositor. All the wasps in the lower panel are males. They are wingless and they will die within the microcosm in which they are born. So their function is to release the females from their galls. They mate with the females. They allow the females to leave from the microcosm, and then a few hours later they die. So very sadly for the males, the microcosm is the only world that they are going to know. They are not going to know the outside world. This is quite tragic for this particular sex in fig wasps. So we've been studying Ficus racemosa for many, many years now. And for example, we know as you go along the developmental progression of this microcosm, you get different wasp species that come in for deposition of their eggs at different particular times. We now know these times. We also know what are the volatiles that attract the wasps in order to come here, which I will tell you about in a little bit. And as I've said, what's very, very constraining to any other wasp that wants to enter this microcosm is what I have written on the extreme right. That irrespective of when you lay your eggs, you might lay your eggs, and this is a 60-day reproductive period when the microcosm can accept eggs being laid. So in a 60-day period, you could lay your eggs right on day 1, or you could be laying your eggs somewhere in between. It doesn't matter. Whenever your eggs are laid, the completely developed progeny of your offspring have to be ready to leave the microcosm at the same time. What this means is that the early ones have 60 days to develop. Their developmental period is 60 days, but the ones that come in later have a much shorter developmental period. So it's a fascinating race to the finish. The early ones have longer and the later ones have a much, much shorter time. So in terms of developmental biology also, and this is something that we are trying to understand, the developmental time of a whole microcosm. And as I said, we now know from our experiments that the ones that come in early shorten the developmental time. They want to hurry up their development because they are very, very vulnerable to being predated or to being parasitized. So they hurry up and they have very strong nutrient sinks and they try to accelerate the rate of development. The ones that are the seed formers, the pollinators, they are also shortening developmental time. Pollinator galls, they are very, very strong nutrient sinks. They want to reduce the time spent in this immobile, vulnerable stage within the microcosm. The later arriving carnivorous wasps, they are actually trying to lengthen the developmental time of the entire microcosm because, as I told you, they come later. So they get a much shorter time to finish their development. And they try to to slow down the development of the microcosm. So we have actually shown that there is a trade-off between these two antagonistic forces. And this can actually shorten or lengthen this developmental time by 2 days or 12 days. Now, 2 days and 12 days may not seem very much, but an adult wasp life is anything between 1 and 20 days. So, in a wasp lifespan, range, this is a very, very long time. So, we see this tug of war between the carnivores and the herbivores in the development of this microcosm.